specter?
I think it's all of, I think the public, and not just public employees. I mean, when you get 61% of the vote, it was way more than police and firefighters and their families voting to preserve collective bargaining rights. This was the first time in American history when collective bargaining rights, to my knowledge, were ever on a statewide ballot. And the fact that, police and fire were the heart of the teachers probably, a lot of other public employees were the heart of that opposition, but it extended into church groups, it extended into civil rights groups, it extended into advocates for children and education and health care, and just people that realize that collective bargaining rights, taking them away is an assault on the middle class. So I think the answer to your question is you will see people understand who's on their side. People understand if you're willing to stand up and fight for the middle class, as everybody behind me was last year, as I was. I think that the public recognizes who's on their side, who's willing to fight for the middle class. Issue 2 last year was just the beginning of illustrating that.
There was a recent poll that came out, I think it was Rasmussen, that said that the race between you and Mr. Mandel is 44% in the dead heat. Do you kind of see that? And also, do you see this race tightening up kind of as we get closer to November?
Most polls, all the polls show it tightening up because I expected that. That's the only poll that shows it that tight. But I know that when a candidate has $13 million spent against them, there's been more money spent against me than any Senate race in the country. And because I assume, we don't know where the money comes from. We assume it's from the oil companies. We assume it's from Wall Street, and we assume it's from Chinese interests and their corporate allies that outsource jobs. Because I've been fighting on those issues. I fought to take away the subsidies for the oil industry, taxpayer subsidies they don't need. I fought on the China currency bill, which is the biggest jobs bill that passed the Senate in 2011. Corporations that outsource jobs to China don't like that bill. And I fought to break up the largest 6 banks, and that's why Wall Street doesn't much like what I do in the Senate. So when you have $13 million spent against you, more than any race in the country, it's going to affect the race. So clearly it's tightening up. I don't know what those numbers mean exactly. But it just means, as Mark said, the grassroots efforts are so important. With all the out-of-state money, I'd rather have the firefighters and the FOP and other police groups, Patrolman Association and the state troopers, I'd rather have them on my side than I would Exxon, as my opponent has, and some of the big Wall Street firms.
Can you talk a little bit about the coalition that helped to pass Senate Bill 5? I know that, obviously some of them are here today. I know there was help defeat Senate Bill 5. Could you talk a little bit about the current strength of that coalition and how important they're going to be in the upcoming campaign?
Well, I think people recognize in this state who's on their side in fighting for the middle class. I mean, fundamentally, issue 2 went down by 22% because 60% plus more than 3/5 of Ohioans saw it as a direct attack on the middle class. That you can't have a society that provides opportunity to people if you don't have collective bargaining. I mean, collective bargaining fundamentally allows a group of men and women to stand together to represent and fight for their rights when individually they would not have any power or ability to do that. Collective bargaining is a simple concept that has made this country great in many ways because it's created a middle class and allowed for people to prosper. And I think in the end, that coalition holds together because people fundamentally think who's on your side and who's not on your side. If you stood with police and fire and teachers and librarians and sanitation workers and others, if you stood with them to fight for the middle class, then you'll continue to fight for the middle class. If you are willing to throw the police and fire overboard and say, we don't care about their pensions, we don't care about their health care, we don't care about class size for teachers, the teachers are teaching it, then I think the voters understand you're not fighting for the middle class. It's pretty clear. It really is collective bargaining, middle class, who's on your side.